taking the time to join this session. Just some housekeeping work. Firstly, my name is Rohit. I'll be your host for the session today. I have a short presentation and then we'll move over to the topic to discuss, which is how do you take your financial reporting into the future with historical data. Something we come across on a regular basis when we build financial reports from ERP systems. What about my legacy data? What about my last 2 years? What about my last 10 years? What about my last year of sales? I want to do comparative reporting. I'm moving to a new ERP. That historical data is so important to me, and so on and so forth. So we do this all the time. One of my colleagues actually commented we should have used the Back to Future movie analogy here because it kind of sounds like that, but I think apologies, both me and Chris just flew over, so we didn't get the gist of it. Maybe next time we can do a Back to the Future series, one for my marketing team to pick up on. But hey ho, we've got quite a few people who've signed up for this session, so I'm going to wait for a minute or so to let them join, and then we'll start the presentation and the actual topic then. Quick housekeeping, you've got a questions area in the section. Please start putting your questions during the session in this area, and towards the end I'll start picking them up and answer the questions. I'll put some time aside towards the end to answer those questions, so please put them here. At the end of the presentation, please, I humbly request you don't log off. There's a presentation that will pop up, a survey that will pop up, and I'd really appreciate your feedback. We are committed to doing these sessions to bring our experiences, to bring and share the knowledge around. So we'd really appreciate feedback, good and bad, on there. Whether there's a certain topic you'd like to see. As you know, we do, our whole world is about ERP reporting. So it'll be great to see and get feedback if there's a particular area you would like us to do a session on and discuss our experiences on. I mean, we do sales, we do inventory, we do finance, we do purchasing, we do manufacturing. So if there's an interest area, please let us know. Of course, the survey will also ask if you'd like a one-to-one discussion or a demo arranged for yourself. So please do that. Please suggest that, and we make that happen. So I can see there are plenty of people joined, so I'm going to start the session. Once again, thank you for taking the time to join this. This session is being recorded and will be sent out to you once we finish. Thank you, and let's make a start. So brilliant. The topic for this session is how to take your financial reporting into the future with historical data, and something we come across all the time, like I mentioned.
Thanks for that intro, and let me get right into it. I have to admit I'm inexplicably passionate about historical reporting, and for two main reasons. The implementation of it can be quite arcane and challenging, and I tend to such topics, but also really historical reporting is where data warehouses absolutely shine and offer up the opportunity for deep business insights. So my goal with this session is to open your eyes to what could very well be missing from your reporting. And we'll do this by surveying my classification of historical reporting use cases. And then we'll very quickly go through the challenges and some solutions to historical reporting, where I'll then move on to what we propose is the best solution and our demo. So there will be a few technical points in passing for the heavily technical participants. And if you're unfamiliar with any of these terms, I do invite you to research them. If you're interested in going deeper and seeing the sequel behind the scenes, please feel free to check out my blog post. But otherwise, this is not going to be a very technical session, because as much as it is challenging under the hood, I want to show you that it needn't be with the right tooling. So let's kick it off with a single definition, and I'm sure by this time you've had a chance to read it. This is my definition of historical reporting, and let me frame it with a few questions that you may ask of your historical reports. Are support tickets trending up? Is receivables aging improving? Is your sales pipeline growing? And you can see the key to all of these questions is that we're looking for things over time and we're identifying the trends over time. Now, you'll probably be familiar with the fact that the most common form of historical reporting is historical charting. And the value of charted history is that it allows the eye to pick trends. If you've ever watched your weight, you know that a single point sample is nothing. It's all about the trend. And I can't emphasize enough that for every metric, it really should be considered in the context of a trend. And just quickly, some general advice based on my 15 years in business intelligence and data warehousing. Before you invest in any specific exercise or analytic, consider the actions that it will drive. If you can't identify valuable actions from an analytic, save the effort. And if you can identify valuable actions, get it in front of people. Put it in Teams, put it in Slack, put it in email, get it up on a screen in the kitchen. We seriously have this in our own office. There's a magic to in-your-face charts, especially the ones where the trend is in the wrong direction. Now, moving on to my first example, having implied that historical reporting is hard, when is it not? I'm sure many of you are thinking, hey, I've got plenty of historical reports. I can see my stock on hand over time. I've got my account balances. I've got this. Well, stock and account balances are calculated based on transaction tables in the source system. And true transaction tables inherently include history, as you'd be familiar with the fact that you reverse out previous transactions. So every step is maintained. So if your source is a transaction table, you're off to the races. And another trivial example is if you're charting by an event, such as manufactured date or delivery date. Now, there's a gotcha to this too, as we'll see shortly. But generally, these are the two trivial scenarios. Now, I want to put it to you that they may have lulled you into a false sense of security. From here on, the pretty charts, please don't or let the pretty charts belie their complexity. And also, please don't be awed by the gobsmacking beauty of my charts, but focus on the deep insights they could provide to your business. So for our first non-trivial example, I couldn't go past starting with the traveling salesperson scenario, which is the textbook entry point to tracking history. Important for this example is that the source data captures the region category on the salesperson table. And I'll refer back to this. So again, the region is on the salesperson table. These two charts that you're seeing actually capture the same sales, and they were produced at the end of the third quarter. What happened in this data, though, is that right at the end of that third quarter, our salesperson moved from east to west. Or I should say, one of our salespersons moved from east to west to be closer to or further from his mother-in-law. So the chart on the left at the time of reporting shows that our flighty salesperson lives on the west coast. And so what you can see is it's been propagated through all of time. It imagines that this salesperson was on the West Coast through all 3 quarters. And this is an example of a historically naive chart. Had we carefully considered history, we'd have produced the chart on the right, where we now reflect the fact that half the sales over that period were East Coast and the other half West Coast, give or take. And more importantly, we can see some trends now. There's some East Coast magic, and the West Coast has lost its mojo. The challenge you're seeing here is the challenge of capturing categorization over time. And other examples of this include product and customer categorization, and even my previous starting point, our donuts example, which I didn't speak to, was actually subject to this risk if we'd happened to chart by category and say moved donuts from baked goods to sweet goods. Now, the historical axis of this chart is an event, sales date. And you may be thinking, I thought charts sourced from a transaction table or based on an event date were trivial. Yes, but I provided a caveat at the time, and they are trivial if every column used is on the transaction table or event table. In this example, the region column was on the salesperson table. So we can now refine my previous advice, and it becomes, if your analytic only requires columns from a single transaction or event table, only then is historical reporting trivial. Otherwise, you'll need to carefully consider what trends you might very well be missing. Again, historical reporting is hard, and the chart on the right, while providing far more insight, is very challenging to produce without a skilled engineer or the right tooling. But we'll get to that. Moving on, I have 3 more examples, and we won't go as deep from here. What we have this time is an opportunity chart. Again, you can opt for the historically naive option, but what trends might you be missing? And this is actually going to be one of our software spotlight examples. So what happens if there is a consistent pattern where low to medium confidence opportunities are reduced in value? Or what happens if all of your opportunities have been reducing for a new competitor, say? So those are the kind of things where the value that we're tracking is changing over time. And without that historical reporting engine operating as it should in the background, you're going to be plumb missing out on those insights. You can see some other examples on this slide, and I imagine there are many, many more. And what I've always found interesting is that changing values over time is not well covered in the data warehouse literature. The best solution to this is actually to transform your data into a transactional table in the warehouse. And again, this requires data expertise or strong tooling, but we'll also cover that just slightly in our software spotlight. So another great example, we'll just skim through it because I think you're getting the feel at this point, is tickets changing state through time. And this is an example of tracking states. You'll be able to pick up trends, seasonal patterns. We have a lot of these internal reports in our own organization, and they just drive action, which is again linking back to what I said before, just key to any analytic you seek to build out. Tracking state changes is actually a little more challenging again than tracking category changes. I won't go into the technical details of how I differentiate states from categories because your intuitive understanding is probably enough. But I do want to call out that I have a blog post that covers this in detail if you're interested in getting into some very technical detail, including the SQL. And I'm sure at this point you've already seen my other examples noted on the slide. Ticket aging over time. Now, this is a fantastic one. Again, this is actually an internal chart. We make great deal of use of our historical capabilities. And you can see here, I've got some other examples that you might want to consider. Accounts receivable aging over time is obviously just a great one. And again, it boils down to if you're not following your these points of data over time, you're really missing out on the trends or the seasonal patterns. And accounts receivable is obviously, again, a great example where there probably are seasonal patterns. So wrapping up all of our use cases, I've put it on one page here so that you can reference back in the recording. And I've emphasized in each of the examples that it's really about over time reporting. If any of these examples are relevant to you, it's likely that you already have a chart for that data to some extent. For example, accounts receivable. But are you charting it over time? You can always elect to go for the historically naive option, but will you know what you're missing? You just can't be sure if the trend you're relying on is correct, which we will see. I've also included 2 additional use cases in yellow, just to complete my list. They are compelling in their own right, but the examples room was beyond occupancy, and I want to move on to challenges and solutions. So hopefully by this point, you've seen at least a few examples relevant to your business and you see the opportunities. Putting aside the 2 qualified trivial use cases, I've categorized the challenges into the 3 bullet points that you can see at the top of the slide. And I won't read them for you because I think short of the archive scenario, you'd be pretty familiar with them based on our examples. Let's instead look at the solutions. And I've broken them down into source-based and warehouse-based, depending on how the changes are captured. And I've also got some color coding so that roll your own is in green, data warehouse automation in Zap blue. Again, if the words are unfamiliar and you're interested, I suggest that you Google them. I'm not going to be going into any of these technical terms. And again, you might be interested in looking at my blog if you're interested in actually seeing how to hook it all up. So sensibly, I'm here to talk about the data warehouse option. Warehouse capture relies on a service to periodically sample the source and capture just the delta. So this leads to my first piece of advice on selecting between source and warehouse-based capture. That is the only time I'd hand on heart recommend a source-based solution is if you have to track very high frequency changes, for example, sub-minute, and you can justify a very high investment in a single source. Then you know where I'm going for everything else. Data warehouse automation just does it for you. I simply cannot recommend a warehouse-based bespoke solution under any reasonable circumstances. Just don't try it at home. Validating a history solution can take months or years, which sounds absurd, but the problem is that the over time phrase that I've been emphasizing comes back to bite, and you only spot your bugs over time, 18 months down the track. Oh my gosh, that number has been wrong, as an example. There's just one more thing I want to point out here, and that is that no cube or in-memory solution is capable of capturing data. And that's because cube and in-memory models don't capture state. So if you want to use Power BI, Tableau, or Click for historical reporting, then you need a warehouse. So what is data warehouse automation? It's as simple as it sounds. Some of the big names are Talent and Westgate, and you've no doubt inferred that we provide our own data warehouse solution. But before I talk to Zap Data Hub, I'll just quickly lay out the core benefits of a data warehouse. And you'd achieve these benefits with any of the great tools I've just mentioned as well. A warehouse offers a sanctioned source of truth. The classic story is in the boardroom example where there are discussions, oh, which data are you looking at? And no one wants to be in that scenario. A warehouse also offers improved governance. That's availability, usability, integrity, data integrity, and security. For example, you want a single point to control who has access to sensitive data. And a data warehouse is a time-tested solution to optimizing analytic reporting. A recent trend is on-demand integration or data virtualization. And to be very clear, this has its place. But I love my burgers on demand. I wouldn't elect for an on-demand, slow-cooked brisket. Again, it has its place, but data warehousing is the time-tested solution to optimizing analytic reporting. And now, if I may, I'll just spend a few points to explain where Zap Data Hub fits in the market. So we have a business user focused interface. Certainly we've considered power users, but our goal has never been to reproduce an integration services or the likes. We want to empower business users with data warehouse automation. And a key differentiator is that we offer pre-built data models that embed literally thousands of hours of ERP modeling expertise. And we know which of the 1 to 2,000 tables are relevant to reporting. We relate, aggregate, denormalize, and we translate backend codes to meaningful labels. Our smart data sources also make it easy to extend these models, and you can also enrich them with a large catalog of complementary data sources we provide. Now, alongside these pre-built models, we also offer pre-built analytics for Power BI, Tableau, and our own reporting engine. And these can provide either your core requirements or a jumping off point. But to be really clear, these aren't demo analytics. These are actually production ready analytics. And so I've just alluded to the fact that Data Hub has its own integrated reporting capabilities. Our capabilities are very strong around financial reporting in particular, which is where we find Tableau and Power BI are not so strong. And I do suggest you research this point. If you do, however, want to go all the way with data visualizations, or you have skills in or license around Power BI and Tableau, Click, absolutely, they are the correct tool for visualization focused analytics, and a particular feature of our product that is quite unique, and in particular powers Power BI, is that we can automatically build a cube or tabular model off the warehouse. So you may be familiar with the fact that Power BI actually uses a tabular model behind the scenes for its engine. By automatically generating a central tabular model in this way, we can provide a governance story for your analytic calculations and hierarchies, etc. Now, finally, Data Hub provides a business user configurable solution to historical reporting. And this solution is capable of addressing all the use cases that we've seen here today. So with that, we'll move on to our software spotlight. Now I'm going to just start with our traveling salesperson example. And again, we had two salespersons. One has moved from east to west. So what we'll do is we'll take John to the west coast, save, and this is all driven off the migrating salesperson model. So I'm just going to process that data through. This just takes a few seconds each time, and I do have Power BI set up in direct query mode. I like to give it a few seconds to each time. I click refresh, and what you'll see, there you go, that stopped my heart, is that by merit of changing John east to west, our historically naive chart has affected all of time, and we've lost information. So what we'll do, put things back the way they were, and we'll just reprocess our model. Again, we'll give it a few seconds, sorry. I want to just see that we're back to where we were. Very good. And now we're going to configure our salesperson pipeline to track history. Now, you want to watch this because it goes fast. We add a history step, and we track the region. Now that's genuinely the entire configuration right there. So what I'll now do is process the entire model. I can speak to why we process the entire model just afterwards. And what we're doing is we're just getting it in our state where it reflects in history that John is East Coast. Now we're going to change John to West Coast. We only need to process this pipeline now. And we'll see if we click refresh. If you give me a little bit, that's why I like to give it a few seconds. Nothing has changed, which is actually fantastic because if you recall, we didn't want John's migration to propagate back through time, but we want to be sure that what we did actually had an effect. So what we can do is take the is current, which is now there simply by merit of our history step, drag it onto the filter, and there we go. If we only take the latest, which is to say the current version, we get the historically naive version. so there are a few interesting points that I can show you in the UI, because again, the complexity here is all wrapped up and we've been completely naive to it. But what we can quickly see is that a preview of the data shows that there's a second version of our salesperson row now, where John previously for version 1 was in the east, and now for version 2 is in the west. So that's an example of data modeling happening behind the scenes. And another interesting note is that the sales amount pipeline, which is where our sales were captured, has to now actually infer the relevant version of the salesperson rows based on time. And this is optional. We don't have any other date times to set it to at the moment. This is optional, what you infer it from. And again, it needs to do some quite complex modeling behind the scenes. It will need to, for that relationship, look up a foreign key to then ensure that the relationship is based on single keys, because Power BI only works on single keys. And there are quite a few other things, but these are the only two bits that even remotely show up in the UI. And I think if we just go back and focus on the fact that it was literally 5 clicks to get our region column tracked, I think that really makes the case for just how easy it can be. And so what we'll do is we'll look at another example now. What I've got is 2 charts produced from 2 models, and they're showing exactly the same thing. What they're showing is our sales pipeline over time. What I've done on the left is I've actually implemented a bespoke warehouse solution for the purposes of this, because what I haven't done is considered that values can change over time. So I've invested, unfortunately, spent time creating this bespoke solution, and I've still missed the mark, as you'll see shortly. So I'll open up our sales pipeline, and what I'm going to do is take opportunity 2, which was from the first quarter. I'm just going to say, well, it's just not looking as good this time around. I'll just quickly note that I have trivialized this and removed states, for example, because tracking states is something, just for the purpose of this exercise, we want to focus on values. Click save. Now, these are my 2 models. There's the SANS history example. I should pull that straight through. And our with history example. We'll have a quick look at this shortly. If we go back to Power BI, hopefully that's given us 5 seconds. Refresh. Okay, well, we have a downward trend now in our high confidence opportunities. That's not good. Oh, no, we have an upward trend in our high confidence opportunities. Again, the chart on the right is correct because it includes the historical information, the fact that our values are decreasing. So our pipeline can shrink, obviously, just by merit of opportunities being less significant. So what I really want to call out here is that you just can't know what you don't know. You don't know what you're missing. And because historical reporting can be so challenging, people will often elect for the chart on the right and completely miss out on opportunities, or worse, naively act on incorrect trends. But if you've got the right tooling, historical reporting can be easy enough that you always consider it. So we'll just skip back to the sales pipeline and quickly look at the config. Now, again, we have a history step. What I've got this time round is that I've tracked the confidence, which is a categorization over time. That's another really handy thing. I won't go into it though. And you've also got the sales amount tracked. If you look over here, this is one slight difference from our previous example. Because we're now tracking a value, you can see the little measures icon, we need to decide between snapshotting and compensating. We'd previously just used the default. Now, what compensating does, and I alluded to this on a previous slide, is it transforms your data into a transactional table in the warehouse. And we can actually see just what that means, because our 600,000 row previously has been reversed out. There's a negative 600,000, and version 2 now inserts the 200,000 record. So you can see we have a history of all those changes. And what we actually behind the scenes did in Power BI was there was a total to date, because now that it's a transactional table, to get a point in time, for example, a stock point in time or your account balance point in time, you always total everything to date. And so we did the same calculation in Power BI, and I won't show you that DAX. So that's the grand sum of it. I really hope this makes the case of just how easy historical reporting can be, and that it's not just an opportunity for new charts, it's that you might be looking at incorrect trends and making incorrect conclusions from your data. It's only when historical reporting becomes easy and second nature that you can be confident that you're capturing the right trends. So indeed, it's hard, but not with the right tool. And if you do happen to do it by yourself, just watch the trailing bugs that they can last. This is experience. They can take months, if not a year, to weed out. So please do feel free to check my blog. I'm actually going to my blog post, sorry. I'll actually be integrating more of this material into my series on historical reporting in the future, because I've had a great deal of fun putting this material together and actually come up with quite a few of my, crystallized quite a few of my own thoughts. I am genuinely passionate about this topic, and so if you're interested in advice, I really do suggest that you reach out on LinkedIn. Just please mention this webinar, and I'm more than happy to talk about the topic. And with that, I'll hand it over. Thank you again for listening.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that. Very useful, very helpful, and I hope his passion came through as well. So just wanted to mention we've got the questions area open. If you have any questions, please put it on there, and I will take the information up. Just to clarify, just wanted to put a slide up there talking a little bit about Zap and who we are and what we do. So we've been going on for a few decades now. We are fundamentally a ETL data warehouse BI tool all in one. You can replace our BI with Tableau or Power BI as well. Data management is our world, and creating value through data management is what we do very, very well. Instead of being a generalist, we are a specialist, and our niche is the ERP world. We work with 4 vendors today: Sage, Syspro, Microsoft Dynamics, and SAP Business One. And between them, we are across 13 ERP products in the markets. With Sage, we've got 4 or 5 in the market. So essentially what that means is if you have one of those systems, your journey to connect, deploy, build a warehouse, build pipelines, build relationships between those pipelines, get a cube out, and get 100, 150 odd reports, dashboards out of it is very, very quick. I mean, we're talking hours here, not even days, weeks, or months. So our value, the acceleration to value is massive. Through us, obviously value is relative, but that's just the step one. The key part is it allows you to build, report, dashboards from theoretically any table, any column on your ERP system if you have one of those, or custom tables or custom columns. And also, being a data warehouse, we've got other 50 plus connectors out there, so you can combine that data with other data sources, and in this particular case, historical data. So from your legacy system, legacy ERP, database, proprietary system, ODBC connector, we've done all sorts to bring the historical data and combine with your actual data to produce and give you that flow. So I'm going to keep the channel open for another couple of minutes. Just waiting for some questions to come through. So let's see what comes through. But yeah, I'll be going on for a while, and that's who we are and what we do, and we do it very, very well. Just questions and stuff here. Okay, there's a question that's popped up. Is there a requirement to have Azure subscription to use Zap? No, we're a cloud product, so we actually do use Azure ourselves, but essentially it'll be in one of our data centers. So the product will be in one of the data centers. You don't need any Azure subscriptions or anything. Essentially, it's cloud, so browser and internet connection, and off you go. So pretty standard, pretty straightforward. I hope that's what the question was referring to, and I'll answer that. But yeah, just give it another minute. But again, once again, request you to stay back and go through that survey, please. Would really appreciate feedback, topics you would like us to cover, and more importantly, if you want a one-to-one session or a demo, please put it on there, and one of the guys will reach out and get it sorted. So I don't think any questions are coming in, so I'm going to close the session. Thank you once again for your time. As mentioned, this recording will be passed, will be sent out either tomorrow or day after through the marketing team. And yeah, look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. And of course, if there are more questions or one-to-one sessions, look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again for your time, and have a lovely evening. Cheers. Take care. Bye.